Good evening, students. Today I have come up with another lesson, that is lesson number 3, and the name of our lesson is The Most Important Day. I hope you must be just doing each and everything in your notebooks. So, here, as the lesson goes, it's a very interesting lesson. And who is the writer of this lesson? The writer of this lesson is Helen Keller. So first I will be reading the lesson for you, and after it I will be giving you explanatory part. As the lesson goes, it was the summer of 1880. A healthy baby girl was born in a small town in Alabama. Her parents loved her dearly and named her Helen. But one day the baby became ill, and day after day her fever stayed high. So it was the summer of 1880. It was the summer of 1880. The year was 1880, and the season was of summer. A healthy baby girl was born in a small town. And what was the name of the town? The name of the town was Alabama. Her parents loved her dearly. She was born very hale and hearty, and her parents loved her dearly and named her Helen. What they named her? Helen. But suddenly, what did happen to that healthy baby? The baby became ill. She fell sick, and day after day, her fever stayed high. Everyone in the family tried to help her to get better, but all they could say was, "There is nothing more we can do. The baby may not live." But just because of her illness, her fever stayed high, and they consulted many doctors. But everyone in the family at last became clueless, and they could say only one thing: there is nothing more we can do. The baby may not live. They hope her condition became worsened day by day, and at last they hope that the baby may not be able to live anymore. But Helen lived, but she was not the same after her illness. Helen lived, but just because of her illness, she lost her ability, she lost her sight and hearing ability when she was only 19 months old. But at that time, the family members were not able to just recognize her illness. Something is very wrong. They thought something is very wrong. Her mother said. At last, they found out what was wrong. They were just guessing. They were just guessing if something is wrong with the child. Something had happened to that girl, but what was wrong with the girl? They couldn't just because they couldn't guess at that time. But at last they found that just because of her fever, Helen, that hale and hearty girl, lost her sight and hearing ability. The child could not see or hear. That child was not able to see and hear. The baby grew into a little girl. Her parents felt sorry for her. Helen often cried and held on to her mother. "Maybe you should give the poor child what she wants," her father would say. That girl grew into a very little girl. Very little girl. She used to cry a lot just because of her illness, and she clung towards her mother. Though Helen could not hear or see, she was a bright little girl. Some people thought Helen could not learn anything. "Why don't you just send her away somewhere?" they said. And there were many people who were like, she was not able to just learn anything, so it would be better to send her somewhere. Her mother did not agree. "Thanks, but Helen is very smart," she said, and added, "The problem is, how can we reach her? She is locked up inside herself." Helen began to grow wild. Just because of her illness, because she has just lost her ability to see and speak, she became deaf and dumb. That is why she grew wild day by day. Her clothes were always dirty. She was often angry. Sometimes she even lay on the floor and kicked her feet. Her condition was becoming worsened day by day. Her clothes were always dirty. She was often angry. Sometimes she even lay on the floor and kicked her feet. Her parents thought that they should find a teacher for her. Miss Sullivan, a young teacher, agreed to help Helen to learn to see the word. Then finally, her parents just agreed to find a teacher for Helen. And one day they got a teacher, a young teacher. And what was the name of that teacher? Miss Sullivan. And finally, they just got a teacher, and Miss Sullivan agreed to help to learn and to see the world around her. Miss Sullivan gave Helen a doll, and when she just came to meet Helen, she gave Helen a doll. Doll spells doll. Miss Sullivan spelled the word with her fingers into Helen's hand. And when she handed that doll to Helen, she spelled the word doll and wrote the word DOLL on her with her fingers on her into Helen's hand. She made the letters with special hand signs. Helen copied her teacher and spelled doll too. But she did not understand what she was doing. She did not know that she was spelling a word or even that word existed. And she copied her teacher. She was smart enough at that time. She was smart enough to copy her teacher. And she just copied her teacher and spelled doll too. But at that time, she did not understand what she was doing, because at that time she was just imitating what the teacher had done to her. She did not know whether what is that doll, and what was spelling a word or even that word existed or not. Helen liked Miss Sullivan. Helen became, day by day, Helen became very fond of her teacher. Miss Sullivan, she was strict but kind. In the days that followed, Helen learned to spell in this way. And through Miss Sullivan's efforts, she learned the sign language. And in this way, a great many words amongst them were pin, hat, cup, and a few words like sit, stand, and walk. But her teacher had been with her several weeks after she understood that everything had a name. And later on, just because of Miss Sullivan's effort, she just came to know that everything through the sign language. She learned that sign language, and finally she learned that everything had a name. One day what did happen? One day her teacher made Helen put her hand into running water. Then she spelled WATR. Suddenly, Helen understood that water meant something wet running over her hand. She understood that words were the most important things in the world. Words would tell her everything she wanted to know. Now, one day, what did happen? Her teacher put her hand into running water and then spelled the word. With her hands, she just spelled the word water. Suddenly, Helen understood that water meant something went running over her hand. And finally, she understood that words were the most important things in the words. Words would tell her everything she wanted to know. Helen learned 30 words that day. Mother, father, sister, teacher were among them. Words that they were to make the word blossom for her. And Helen learned 30 words on that particular day. And she learned each and every word like mother, father, sister, teacher were among them. She learned many words, and among them were these words. And her words started blossoming from that day onwards for her. It would be difficult to find a happier child than Helen, and she lay in her bed at that close that eventful day. She thought about the joys it had brought her, and for the first time longed for a new day to come. Finally, she came to know that the word is the everything has got the word, and that is the thing she wanted to know. By the end of August, in 6 months short, Helen knew 625 words. By the time she was 16, Helen could speak well enough to go to college. Helen Keller, the little girl, became one of history's most famous women. She traveled around the world, speaking in more than 25 countries in the five major continents. Wherever she went, she brought new courage to millions of people. So this is a story. In the last, we can say this is a story about a young girl. And what was the name of the girl? Helen. And just because of her illness, she was not. She just lost her ability and to speak and see, but just because of her teacher. And what was the name of the teacher? Miss Sullivan. She made great efforts to just through her efforts, she learned the sign language, and finally her words blossoms. And she just later words in the last Helen words, new words blossom because through the sign language taught by her teacher and because of her all efforts, she finally understood that it was the word that would tell her everything she wanted to know. So, in this way, Helen learned many things and just overcome all the obstacles in his life. So, this is all about children. So, I hope you must have understood it. Thank you.